Welcome to Peaceful Soul, the place where we search together for answers to life's most difficult questions about happiness and meaning. Let me start with a story. In the heart of downtown Chicago, there's a young woman named Olivia. Every morning, she stands in front of the mirror, fixes her hair, and adjusts her business suit. But instead of asking herself, "Do I feel comfortable today?" she whispers, "I wonder what my coworkers will think of me." Throughout the day, from the way she replies to emails to the food she chooses at lunch, Olivia's mind is consumed by the gaze of others. It's as if hundreds of invisible eyes are following her every move. And when the night falls, instead of feeling proud of her efforts, she feels drained, anxious, and never quite enough in the eyes of others. Olivia's story isn't unique. In fact, it's the story of millions of people, maybe even yours or mine. We work not always because we love what we do, but to prove our worth to an employer. We post photos on social media not only to capture memories but also to count likes and comments. Some even choose a career, a lifestyle, or even a life partner, not out of true desire, but out of fear of how others might judge them. And here lies the paradox: the more we try to please others, the further we drift from ourselves. Research backs this up. Studies from the American Psychological Association have consistently shown that people who rely heavily on external validation are far more prone to anxiety, depression, and burnout. This is exactly where the philosophy of Alfred Adler and the best-selling book The Courage to be Disliked enter the conversation. Authors Ichiro Kashimi and Fumitake Koga, drawing on Adler's ideas, delivered a radical message. Real happiness doesn't come from being accepted, it comes from having the courage to be disliked. It sounds counterintuitive. Who wants to be disliked? But there's a deeper truth here. They argue that almost every worry we carry, whether it's about school, career, or relationships, isn't just about us. It always involves someone else's shadow. When we fear failure, what we really fear is people seeing us fail. When we feel insecure about our looks, it's because we're worried others won't accept us. Adler called this the trap of recognition. And the only way out is courage. The courage to live authentically, even if that means some people won't like you. Have you ever wondered why the worries you think are yours alone almost always involve other people? Take Ethan, a law student in Boston. Before every exam, he struggles with sleepless nights. On the surface, he tells himself he's afraid of failing the test. But if you look deeper, what truly keeps him up is the gaze of his professors, the expectations of his parents, and the comparisons with his peers. Alfred Adler pointed out a truth that few want to admit: no worry exists in isolation. From our appearance to our careers, the root almost always traces back to relationships with others, fear of being judged, criticized, or left behind. This explains why in the U.S., according to the American Psychological Association, APA, nearly 15 million adults suffer from social anxiety disorder. So what separates happy people from unhappy ones? The answer doesn't lie in circumstances, but in the goals they choose for their lives. Happy people face hardships just like anyone else, but they define themselves by contribution and value, not by recognition. Take Daniel, a high school teacher. He doesn't worry much about whether parents praise him. Instead, his joy comes from watching his students grow day by day. On the other hand, unhappy people often have a single goal: to be praised. And when that praise doesn't come, disappointment takes over. The famous Harvard study of adult development, which has followed participants for over 75 years, supports this. It found that the biggest predictor of long-term happiness is not money or fame, but the quality of our relationships. And meaningful relationships only emerge when people aren't obsessed with external validation. If we dig deeper, one core factor shapes it all: our goals within relationships. Adler believed that every person sets unconscious goals when interacting with others. Some choose goals like creating value, nurturing connection, or contributing to the community. Others aim to be admired, to appear superior, or at least to avoid criticism. And this choice determines the emotions and behaviors that follow. Consider Natalie, a young entrepreneur in California. She was once obsessed with making her company the darling of the press, the shining star in the eyes of investors. The result? Endless stress and competition. Only when she shifted her focus, Prioritizing how her product could genuinely serve her customers, did she find balance and freedom again? It shows us that happiness or misery largely comes down to one simple question. What goal are you setting in your relationships with others? There's a trap that so many Americans fall into, living their entire lives just to seek recognition. From social media to the workplace, from school to family gatherings, we're constantly waiting for that nod of approval, that like button, or that word of praise. But here's the paradox: the more we chase recognition, the less freedom we have. Take Emily, a young designer in New York. She would spend hours perfecting tiny details just to gain a few hundred likes on her posts. When the praise came, she felt elated. When it didn't, she felt worthless. Adler warned us about this dangerous path. External validation is never stable. It's like an addiction: the more you get, the more you crave. And recent research from Stanford University shows that people who rely heavily on social feedback are twice as likely to develop depression and anxiety compared to those who don't. And here's another crucial truth: what we often call trauma doesn't have to define us forever. Adler once said, "The problem is not the experience itself, but the meaning we attach to it." Consider James, a U.S. veteran. After returning home from the battlefield, he was haunted by memories of losing his comrades and believed his life was broken. But through a veteran support program, James learned to shift his perspective. Those memories no longer became a prison sentence, they became a mission. He went on to found a nonprofit organization that now helps hundreds of veteran families. His story shows us that trauma itself doesn't define us, it's how we interpret and use it that shapes our future. But then comes a tough question. Why do some people seem to cling to unhappiness? Almost as if it's a choice? Adler offered a controversial perspective. Many people actually use unhappiness as a strategy. Imagine Robert, an office worker. He constantly complains about how overwhelming his job is, how his health is failing, and how he's stuck. But look closer, and you'll see his unhappiness serves hidden purposes. He gains sympathy, attention from colleagues, and even avoids the risk of change. Psychologists call this secondary gain, the hidden benefits of suffering. And it's one of the biggest reasons people delay their own happiness. It's a hard truth to swallow. But unless we recognize it, we remain trapped in a self-sustaining cycle of misery. When we talk about modern American society, one theme immediately stands out: competition. From childhood, kids are ranked and compared based on grades. As adults, they're measured by income, job titles, assets, or even how many followers they have on social media. Competition itself isn't bad, it can fuel effort, innovation, and progress. But when competition becomes the standard for measuring human worth, it strips away joy and turns us into slaves of an invisible scoreboard. Alfred Adler once emphasized that the root of unhappiness lies in trying to be better than others, instead of focusing on how we can contribute meaningfully. The data is striking. Gallup surveys show that over 60% of American workers feel burned out due to competitive pressures at work. Yet this stress doesn't make them happier, it only increases anxiety, depression, and a sense of emptiness. That's why the idea of the courage to be disliked is so powerful. It doesn't mean being selfish or intentionally defiant. It means having the freedom to live without being shackled by other people's judgments and expectations. Imagine deciding to leave a high-paying career to pursue something you truly care about. Family, friends, and even former colleagues might criticize you. But if you can embrace that discomfort, you'll discover a new kind of freedom, the freedom to live by your own values and goals. Research from the University of Chicago found that people who are less dependent on external approval report significantly higher levels of happiness and marital satisfaction. In other words, the courage to be disliked is really the courage to live free. Take the story of Jessica, a former Wall Street finance professional. For years, she worked 80-hour weeks, chasing every contract and every promotion. Outwardly, she was admired as a model of success, but inside she felt hollow and exhausted. Her turning point came when a close colleague collapsed and was hospitalized from overwork. That moment made Jessica realize she was sacrificing her health and happiness just to be recognized. So she made a bold choice. She quit Wall Street, moved to a small town, and opened a community coffee shop. At first, her old friends mocked her, saying she had destroyed a golden career. But within a few years, Jessica found real joy in creating a warm space where people could connect. Most importantly, she learned to live without proving anything to anyone but herself. That is the true freedom of having the courage to be disliked. David, a student at Harvard, is a striking example of the relentless pressure of competition in elite academic environments. From a young age, he grew up under the weight of expectations, to make his family proud, to earn an Ivy League degree, to achieve accomplishments that few could match. At Harvard, David's life wasn't just about learning, it was about keeping up in an invisible race. Who joined the most clubs? Who published research? Who landed the most prestigious internships? Once, he received an A- instead of an A, and he spent sleepless nights convinced that a single grade could ruin his future. His turning point came when he enrolled in a campus counseling program. There, David realized he had been living inside a cage built from other people's approval. By shifting his focus from being the best to finding where I can contribute, he slowly escaped the spiral of unhappiness. Science backs this up. The 75-year Harvard study of adult development, the longest-running study on happiness, revealed that money and fame do not predict long-term happiness. What truly matters are the quality of relationships and a sense of connection to community. Meanwhile, research from Stanford University found that students who chase only achievements and external validation report twice the stress and a 40% higher risk of depression compared to those who find meaning in learning itself. These numbers tell a simple truth. We cannot build a sustainable life on the foundation of other people's judgments. Real joy comes from contribution, knowing that your presence makes life better for someone else, even if no one is watching. Consider the story of Linda, a nurse in Texas. Her job isn't glamorous, her salary isn't high, and almost no one on social media knows her name. Yet every day, Linda brings care and comfort to her patients, listens to them in their pain, and consoles families during moments of fear and uncertainty. As Linda once put it, her happiness doesn't come from praise, but from seeing a patient recover or watching a family smile again after a crisis. This echoes a central finding in psychology. The happiest people aren't those with the most prestige, but those who feel they add meaning to the lives of others. One of the most important turning points in breaking free from unhappiness is learning to recognize your own worth. Many of us constantly ask ourselves, am I good enough? Or, what do people think of me? But as Alfred Adler pointed out, a person's value doesn't come from outside judgment, it comes from their very existence and the way they choose to live their life. You don't need a prestigious title, $1 million home, or thousands of social media followers to prove you matter. Think about it this way. A newborn baby can't achieve anything. Yet it is still a priceless source of joy to its parents. So why, as adults, do we convince ourselves that we're only valuable when we do enough for society? Learning to accept yourself, with both strengths and flaws, is the foundation for living freely, unchained from the weight of others' opinions. The next lesson is about letting go of transactional sacrifice. In America, this trap is all too common. People help, they sacrifice, but deep down, they expect something in return. Imagine someone who throws an elaborate birthday party for a friend and quietly expects the same in return. When it doesn't happen, they feel hurt or even resentful. But that isn't friendship, it's an unspoken social contract. Authors Ichiro Kashimi and Fumitake Koga emphasize that real love, friendship, or contribution has value only when it's not an exchange. When you stop expecting a reward, your relationships become lighter, more genuine, and far freer. And finally, happiness comes from living fully in the present. Americans are often raised to chase the future. Good grades to get into college, a good job to climb the ladder, a high salary to retire comfortably. But this endless pursuit often robs people of joy in the here and now. Adler's philosophy reminds us that happiness isn't found in someday, it's found in the way we live each moment today. You can set goals, you can dream big, but don't forget that life's true meaning often lies in the ordinary, a family dinner, an honest conversation with a friend, or the simple gratitude of being healthy. When you learn to embrace the present, life no longer feels like a race against time. Instead, you are living a meaningful life, one day at a time. To make sure all the ideas we've explored don't just stay as abstract philosophy, The real key is turning them into daily actions. In modern American life, where the pressure to succeed and the weight of other people's opinions are always present, you can begin with small but powerful steps. First, build the habit of asking yourself, am I doing this because I truly want to? Or just because others expect me to? This one simple question helps you separate genuine choices from the need for validation. Second, practice gratitude every day. Writing down 3 things you're grateful for before bed can shift your focus away from comparison and toward the positive aspects of your life. And third, choose one way to contribute to your community that feels meaningful to you. Maybe tutoring a local student for free, volunteering at your church, or simply being there to listen to a friend in crisis. When you do this, you'll see that real happiness doesn't come from praise or applause. It comes from the deep sense that I matter, I make a difference. And always remember, happiness is not a final destination. It is the way you choose to walk your path every single day. We've talked about breaking free from the judgment of others, embracing who you are, letting go of transactional sacrifice, and living fully in the present. All of these lessons point to one core truth: the courage to live authentically. Even if it means some people won't like you, true freedom doesn't come from being loved by everyone. It comes from having the courage to choose the life you believe is right for you. If today you take just one small step, whether it's saying no to something you don't want, or giving yourself permission to enjoy an evening without social media, you've already moved closer to that freedom. And if you found value in today's video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Peaceful Soul, and share this video with someone who might also need a reminder about inner freedom. I'd love to hear your story too. Drop a comment below and tell me, are you still living for others' approval? Or have you started living true to yourself? I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring how to cultivate a peaceful soul in the middle of this noisy world.